The Indian Army has come up with a unique plan to de-radicalize stone pelters in the Kashmir Valley. Sources have told India Today the Army has proposed a Bharat Darshan for troublemakers and stone pelters. So youth will be taken on a national integration tour. The plan is to take these identified youth across the country to know the real India. So for example, they will be taken to companies like TATA and INFOSYS to know about India's growth story. They will be taken to temples, mosques, churches and gurdwaras. They'll be shown how temples, mosques, churches and gurdwaras coexist in our country. The army will also intensify skill development and professional training classes for youngsters. The aim, according to a senior commander in South Kashmir, is to wean these youngsters away from stone pelters and also ensure that the hardcore elements do not join terror ranks, because there is clear and present danger. It's happening on ground. So on what basis are we saying this? We're saying this on the basis of evidence on ground. So there is this family in Kashmir. The parents, the relatives, they're running from pillar to post. They've approached the army, they've approached the CRPF, they've approached the Jammu and Kashmir police, desperately requesting them to ensure that their 14-year-old who left his house, he's a budding cricketer. He was doing extremely well in studies. He left the house to play a cricket match and he disappeared. Some days later, the information filtered in and on WhatsApp groups that he'd actually joined Lashkar-e-Taiba and had been indoctrinated to join terror ranks. The family wants him back. India Today's Pooja Shali traveled to Pulwama to get you this report.
The face of a teen terrorist. He ran away from home at 14 to join terror ranks. His family is now running from pillar to post, hoping he surrenders before he becomes a hardcore terrorist and is neutralized by the security forces.
फिर फेसबुक पर फोटो आया उसका। अच्छा। हमने देखा उस फोटो को। फौज ने बताया। उसको बोला सिलेंडर करो। अभी तो टाइम है। बच्चा है छोटा। अभी तो छोटा बच्चा है। हम कहाँ से लाएंगे उसको? उसके हाथ में भी बंदूक है।
For the first time, his terrified family has come forward to speak about him, and this sheds light on overground workers of terror groups brainwashing youth of the valley. India Today travelled to village Lelhar in South Kashmir's Pulwama. We spoke to the family of a 14-year-old budding cricketer who left school to join Lashkar-e-Taiba.
When this young boy decided to choose militancy, he was not even 14 years old. And today, the family says they were completely clueless as to what exactly went wrong. Why would a boy so bright during his school days and really great at the sport, especially of cricket, chose a path that went so wrong?
Posters and banners are put up outside school eulogizing terrorists. Terror slogans are painted on walls and young students are under tremendous peer pressure to either pelt stones or join terrorist groups.
मैंने उसे ये भी कहा कि आज तो हड़ताल है पुलवामा, आज नहीं जाना है। उसने कहा कि हमें ज़रूर जाना है, आज हमें टेस्ट है। तो बाप ने दिया है उसको 70-80 रुपया दिया है। अपनी माँ को कहा उसने, अगर देर हो गया हमको फिक्र मत करिए।
Last winter, terrorists and their support structure burned down over 3 dozen schools in the valley. Schools were burned down in central and South Kashmir. The aim clearly was to force children into stone pelting. Students are not just being used to pelt stones but also to disrupt security forces and help terrorists escape during anti-terror operations. Some children as young as 10 are under tremendous peer pressure to either pelt stones or join terror ranks. The security forces have started massive anti-terror operations to neutralize hardcore terrorists and are reaching out to families relatives and friends to get misguided youth to stop pelting stones, abandon the path of terror and join the national mainstream.
The question is, what is the government of the state and the union government planning to take up as a strategy to make sure at least the young boys do not take up this radicalized path?
With Pooja Shali in Pulwama, Bureau Report, India Today.
So one way is to de-radicalize these youth, but the bigger question is what's the government doing to go after those who are actually radicalizing these youngsters in the first place? Is the government taking any action, or is this band-aid on cancer? I want to quickly bring in our guests on the broadcast. Will a Bharat Darshan de-radicalize youngsters? Should the army think of stronger measures, and not just the army, the entire state apparatus? A reality check for Kashmiri stone pelters. I want to quickly cut across to India Today's Pooja Shali, who joins us with more on the story. I also have with us John Dayal. He's a noted human rights activist, and Lieutenant General Shankar Prasad, former Director General of Infantry. His troops have countered terrorism for decades in the Kashmir Valley. But Pooja, I want to come to you first. I want to understand from you, and you've traveled across Kashmir, how do these youngsters get radicalized in the first place?
Well, in fact, sources with the Jammu and Kashmir police maintain that over 200 young boys, in fact, over teenage, have joined militancy, have joined the terror ranks in the past few years. To be specific, 22 from the Pulwama district in South Kashmir, which remains very tense. But importantly, it is now children who are beginning to pick up guns, who've seen conflict since childhood, which means that other people around them could be probably at the educational institutions that they're heading to. Is it via social media that they have access to, that they are getting this indoctrination? Because who is to be held accountable when a 14-year-old boy escapes, joins terror ranks? The family says they're shocked, but they're clueless. He had a bright future, which he probably still has, when the family via India Today is requesting him to surrender. But they also fairly know that probably that is not going to happen, and the security forces maintain that these are young children. They can be brought back unless probably the government is able to give out a stronger message that children cannot be used. Because let's not forget, as per United Nations Article 3, children cannot be used in armed conflicts in this manner. But in Kashmir, increasingly now, even if not a trend yet, increasingly now, teenagers as young as 12 to 13 are taking up terror ranks. Is it peer pressure? Is it indoctrination? Or is it in many ways the government not reaching out to these bright children?
Okay, government reaching out to these children is one aspect of the story. But John Dayal, it's now time to hit out at those who are radicalizing these children in the first place. 12-year-olds pelting stones, 14-year-olds picking up the gun.
You know, across the world and down in history, it is the brightest children. Look at the Mao Revolution, look at the Spanish. It's the brightest children who first see what is happening and then respond to it. Now we call it auto-radicalization. But what makes them amenable to this auto-radicalization or to even external radicalization, you're going to look at that. It will not do just to say we're going to pick up these identified youth and give them a Bharat Darshan.
No, but all these... No, I want to... I don't want to get into an academic debate. This is far more serious. No, John Dayal, why is somebody like John Dayal... I'm asking you a very direct question, sir. Sir, I'm asking you a very direct question. John Dayal, who's radicalizing these youngsters? Is it happening that loudspeakers in religious institutions are saying something? Are we ignoring that fact? Are WhatsApp groups from Pakistan radicalizing youth? Are you ignoring that? These are aspects that need to be looked into.
And why are Kashmiri youth who are already in India, in Meerut, elsewhere, why are they bashed up every so often? It is,
every so often? So you think that one instance... Let
me complete.
I want to understand from you. I want to understand from you that one instance in Meerut, you will talk about that one instance in Meerut, but not about what's happening in Kashmir?
I want to complete my sentence. Radicalizers must be challenged. The borders must be watertight. People who radicalize from mosques, they must be identified. Mosques are no place to spew venom. Mosques are places to call the people to azan. All that must be done. But it is not either or. You must have Bharat Darshan of all children. It's a good thing. And you must have people from the rest of India into Kashmir. That's a good thing. Don't say we're going to just pick up some people and bring them to Bharat Darshan. I'm so happy that we have not had for weeks, in fact for months, any instance of pellet guns. That's a very good thing. But let me also tell you one small thing. Kashmir is complex. There are these radicalizations, but there are also a large number of people who are peace-loving, who are sitting for UPSC. For every college where there is an agitation, girls' college, let us say these days, there are other colleges where principals and parents are acting and nobody is agitating. So in this complex thing, pick up the good stories, pick up the good vibes.
Okay, that's a very positive comment coming from John Dayal. Pick up the good vibes. India Today always does. But India Today also exposes those who are out to radicalize youngsters. And I want to understand from you, General Shankar Prasad, how does a 12-year-old become a stone pelter? In some instances, we've seen kids pelting stones. In some instances, I want to understand from you, who's radicalizing these kids?
First of all, before I answer a question, let me please also put on record in response to what Mr. John Dayal said. Does he not understand, does he not know that a large number of Kashmiri youth are joining the civil services through the UPSC exam?
I said so.
A large number of youth of Kashmir not joining the armed forces.
I said so.
So don't say,
no, but I said so.
They are very much a part of India. They are very much a part of India. An odd incident, an odd... Can I finish, please? Mr. Dayal, can I finish? I did not interrupt when you spoke. Let me complete what I want to say. There is a question the gentleman has asked me. Let me answer that question. Please don't interrupt. You and I are both respectable gentlemen, must listen to each other carefully.
Go on, General.
You're breaking the chain of thoughts unnecessarily. There's a question Gaurav has asked me and I need to answer that question. Thank you very much. I didn't want to raise my voice, but you forced me to do that. Anyway,
General,
back to the question. There is a large number of people in Kashmir amongst the young people who want to join mainstream India. There are no two opinions about that. The army has gone far beyond its call of duty in doing sadbhavna, in taking these kids for a very long time into India Bharat Darshan and exposing them to all the religious shrines and all the religious activities and mainstream Indian opportunities. That having said, now the question that you asked, Gaurav, the radicalization process began many years ago at the instance of Pakistan. They, as a policy of fermenting or further increasing insurgency, decided to target the young children. The young children, as you understand, are are minds who get motivated by video games, who get motivated by comics. They say guns and weapons. They find all kinds of Star Wars and they get motivated by holding this material. And then think this is the greatest thing that can happen. So they started burning schools. 20, 30, 40 schools have got burnt.
Yes.
And that is where all these youngsters came out to be radicalized. Radicalization is taking place because the schools are not existing. Radicalization is taking place because young people get motivated by people like Burhan Wani, who was 18 or 19 year or 17 year old. And they think guys like in that uniform are great Rambos. So all of this put together creates a young mind. This little boy from Pulwama, 14-year-old, a great budding cricketer.
Yes.
He would have played for India, he would have played for Kashmir, he would have played in Ranji Trophy. And he has now gone away because of that gun. And that gun has come in because there is no school. And there is no school, therefore he is on the streets.
And is that also because, John Dayal, people are scared to criticize?
And they are Kashmiris.
Yes.
And they are Kashmiris.
Yes.
They are Kashmiris, Gaurav. They are Kashmiris who are misguiding their own nasal. They are ruining their own country, their own state.
And people are scared to call them out. John Dayal, people are scared to call them out. A terrorist like Burhan Wani, or a terrorist like Sabzar, or a terrorist like Zakir Musa.
Let me make the last point.
Okay.
Gaurav, let me make the last point.
Okay,
Gaurav, let me make a last point. The last point I want to make before you don't want to talk to me ever again is, what is the Ministry of Human Resource Development doing? Is it the task of the army? Are we going to give a free hand to those people who support insurgency and Pakistanis? For years, the HRD ministry, both in the central government and in the state government, could be and should be looking at it. Pakistan is always taking 2 steps ahead of us. We are reacting to it.
Okay.
Why don't we understand
I
that the
concur, we should be proactive and not reactive. And General, don't ever think that I don't ever want to speak to you again. Whether it was the Kargil War of 1999 or till date, always want to speak to you, General. But that's on a lighter note. But John Dayal, are we so politically correct that we are scared to call out a terrorist? We are scared to call a terrorist, or those who radicalize, we are scared to call them out?
1 second, just to tell the General, I did not interrupt him. I was just telling him that he did not listen when I was saying exactly the same words that he was saying.
Point taken.
So General, there is absolutely, this is a decent channel. We are not in a screaming match. And my apologies if you got, if you thought I was interrupting you. I, like you, both of us, as you quite correctly said, are gentlemen, respectable people. Having said that, the gun is a toy when it is sold in every Indian shop and at Diwali elsewhere. It's a toy. When does it become a symbol? The circumstances are like that. Nobody, but nobody, a liptard, a prostitute, a peacenik like me, ever condones the militarization of the young mind. We abhor it. We abhor the militarization of the young mind.
So Burhan Wani was a terrorist for you?
He was, and he paid for it with his life.
Sabzar Ahmed is a terrorist, Zakir Musa is a terrorist, and these terrorists need to be dealt with harshly.
Sir, they picked up the gun against the state, they paid for it with their lives, and nobody says that they were princes or angels. Nobody says that. Having said that, what I was trying to say was, Kashmir requires multitudes, multiple layers of initiatives. Check the terrorism, check the Pakistanis, check all that you can to seal the border, but also see that you have a sane policy. Bharat Darshan and Kashmir Darshan must go in hand. Don't just say we're going to do it for people who have been identified as potential terrorists. Do it for all Pakistani or all Kashmiri children. In fact, Pakistani children should also come to India so they will know how India is so much better than Pakistan.
Oh, absolutely. Concur with you entirely on that. A quick break at this stage. We come back to this debate. We come back to this debate about how youngsters are being radicalized in Kashmir, how an effort is being made. It's a very systematic process of burning schools down so that there are no schools and children are out on the streets to pelt stones. Who's doing that? And the question is, what action has the government taken against them? That story and lots more coming up. Stay with us. Who's radicalizing the youth in Kashmir, especially youngsters, especially teenagers, and what's the government doing to de-radicalize them? And I want to quickly bring in Pooja Shali once again. Pooja, what steps is the government taking, especially the state government? Because Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti has also spoken of 11-year-old boys or 12-year-old boys indulging in stone pelting or hitting out at senior citizens, and that needs to stop. Now, what is the government doing to de-radicalize youngsters or go after those who are radicalizing them?
Well, definitely, while the state government and the state police are trying to say that this is not an alarming trend, the fact is what has been caught on the tape is clearly of not only a family speaking about a boy who escaped, but also probably increasing number of young boys who are getting influenced by this terrorist propagandas. So the state government is trying to open up avenues of education, entertainment, sports, probably to not only distract children so that they do not land up on the streets and indulge in violence, beginning with stone pelting and then picking up guns, but also the state government is trying to reach out to children, specifically in Srinagar and then in these other tense areas as well. But it does appear that the strategy is not very fast yet. The state government will have to put in more efforts to make sure that that isolated villages in areas like South Kashmir, in North Kashmir, will have to be taken into consideration. It cannot be limited to the city. But as of now, yes,
Prasad, while there's, you can have football matches like the CRPF is doing, or Sadbhavna, or cricket matches as the army started, IPL. Inherently, if you have an IPL match, some joker ends up wearing a Pakistani cricket dress. Now, what action needs to be taken to ensure that that change comes about? Or do you just look the other way and continue, let it be business as usual?
No, Gaurav, it's a very unfortunate story. We have a Ministry of Human Resource Development. They should have a policy and a paper which should be focused towards specifically Kashmir. understanding that the youth there are getting radicalized. As Mr. Dayal rightly said, that it is that guns are toys. Children begin to use them as toys and then graduate them to actual guns as great things happening. So we have to see what is a plot. We have a security plot. We have a fighting insurgency plot. We have a plot against going about terrorists. All of that has to be done by the army, which the army is trying to do the best that it can.
Yes.
I am quite sure that the HRD ministry has got a plot, but we don't seem to be aware of it, and nor do the Kashmiri children need to be aware of it. We need to have the central government and the state government focus a lot on giving money not to the Hurriyat, not to a lot of other people, but to this project. This project is the most primary project that the government must have, both at the state level and at the union level.
Yes.
And cricket matches. Now you see that singing of national anthem of Pakistan, wearing Pakistan uniform. What action have we taken?
Yes.
So people are getting encouraged to go on doing it.
John Dayal,
there is a lobby which propagates this. So
this lobby, how does that lobby, John Dayal, how do you neutralize that lobby? The general has brought a very interesting point. How do you neutralize that lobby?
No, both the general and I want peace. Maybe we have a different approach to it. The lobby is a political issue and you must tackle with it politically. The military part of it, the weapon training part of it, the weapon infiltration part of it is to be challenged in
that the army is doing, that the army, CRPF, JKP are doing. No, but you know, what should happen to these chaps if they're wearing Pakistani uniform or singing Pakistan's national anthem, and there are people who are encouraging them to do so?
A one-off may be an idiot.
It's not a one-off?
But yeah, but let me complete our sentence. If it were a one-off, it would be an aberration. People do that. People wear American flags, all that, you know. But if it is an organized thing to taunt, to test your patience, then you must use counter psychology. But also let me tell you, on de-radicalization, there's some good case studies and examples from the Northeast. When I was there, when Scott O'Sue and others came over ground as part of a political process, and after that, generation of Naga youth and other Mizo youth were de-radicalized and integrated, and now they are part of the Indian army and are being used, I must say, in counter Maoist operations and elsewhere. It can be done. It requires a cool head, it requires thinking, and as I said, Kashmir is not a black and white situation. There are shades of grey. Fine-tune, nuance your policy to each shade of grey. There will be success.
I'm sure there will be success once people have decided that success will be achieved and Pakistan-sponsored terror will be defeated in the Kashmir Valley. John Dayal, General Shankar Prasad and Pooja Shali. For the moment, many thanks for joining me.